In this section, we're going to set up a Jenkins Freestyle job which will be responsible for building, testing, and otherwise verifying and eventually delivering our Java jar file to a Maven repository. In order to do this, we first have to create a credential that has the username and password used for publishing to our Maven repository. This is done by going to Manage Jenkins, Manage Credentials, System, Global Credentials. I've already created it here, but the way you do this is to add a credential of type username and password, give it the username, password, and a descriptive ID. In this case, I called it GitHub Publish Maven. Back at the dashboard, we're going to say New Item, give it a name, then select the type Freestyle Project. A note here about what a freestyle project is. A freestyle project or job is a Jenkins job in which you construct it by navigating through the graphical user interface. This is actually not preferential. The way you're going to want to build a pipeline whenever you have the chance is by using a pipeline as code, which we will demonstrate later. When it comes to the first step of constructing our freestyle job, we're going to have to give it a Git location. In our case, we're going to give it the SSH Git URL, select the Git credentials we have set up earlier, and noting that our main branch is called main instead of master. Typically, we would be doing something known as polling SCM, which would be looking for changes in source control, which when found would trigger this job. There are several options you have for doing this. Generally, poll it every 5 minutes. However, this is also not preferential. Ideally, you would use what is known as a webhook. That webhook would work without polling, and the way it would work is once set up, it would make a call from SCN into the Jenkins server. But we're going to skip that complexity for now and just initiate this manually. In terms of the build environment, we're going to have to publish using our secret. Our secret in this case is for the Maven username and password. So we're going to select it here as a binding. In this case, the username and password separated. Make sure we have selected our publish plugin, and we're going to give it MVN username and MVN password. The next step has us adding a build step. The build step is what's going to execute whenever the job is run. In this case, we're going to use the Gradle wrapper. This is done by using the Gradle script. We're going to specify to use the Gradle wrapper. We are also going to elect to make the Gradle-W executable. This is because on operating systems like Linux, you can't execute something unless it has the appropriate permission, known as executable, also known as +X, or 7. The task we're going to call is publish, because based off of our task hierarchy, publish will end up having to call build, which will end up having to call everything including our unit test and static code analysis. Additionally, we're going to include some switches to help us with debugging. In this case, -I for info, --stack trace for any detailed logging, but also remember that we have 3 variables we're going to have to include: our username and password for our Maven publish repository, and also the version. MVN username is injected as an environment variable here, along with password. This comes from our credential binding. For our version, we're going to say 1 dot and then use the build number. Build number is a Jenkins specific environment variable that will increment every time a new build happens. This is so that on every successful publish, we will get a new version. Now we can build it. You can click on the bar to see the console output as it happens. We got build successful, so we know that it worked. How do we verify it? If we go to Packages, we will see that a new package version has been published, in our case 1.1, on our project page. The 1 comes from the build number. Also remember that we had reports for code coverage, for unit testing, and for PMD. So how do we deal with those? We have the option of using Jenkins plugins. Jenkins plugins are something you can get to by going to Manage Jenkins and look under Plugins. Specifically, we're going to look for the Jacoco plugin. However, I already have this installed, so I'll show how I got to it. You do a search for a plugin, you select it, and then once you select it, you can install it. When you're doing the installation, you have the option to install without restart or to restart. In my case, because I'm running locally, I didn't bother with a restart. Jacoco is what's going to give us our code coverage reports. For publishing our PMD results, we have the Warnings Next Generation plugin. The unit testing reports are a default part of Jenkins. In order to include these plugins, we're going to have to go back to our job and configure it. The place in the build where we're going to do this is going to be under the post build actions, and we're going to start with publishing our JUnit results. So we can go to add post build action, publish JUnit result, and this is where we have to give it the location of our test XML files. If you remember from our project, they're under lib, build, test results, test, and then we're going to look for any XML file. And this is what will give us some JUnit output on our page. We also then have Jacoco code coverage reports. So we're going to come here, select record Jacoco coverage, and we're not actually going to have to do anything. It's already set up to do what we want. In this case, it's going to look for this Jacoco executable output that's going to pick everything up. Finally, for PMD, we're going to use the Warnings Next Gen plugin. In this case, it's the option Record Compiler Warnings and Static Analysis Results. We're going to have to select the tool of PMD. And for the pattern, we're going to have to give it the location of where our reports are. So lib, build, reports, PMD, and we'll look for any of the XML files. Now we can run it again and see what happens. You can see lots of new output with PMD and Jacoco. If you look at the job page now, we'll see a coverage trend, PMD warnings, and also some test output. If you click on, for example, the coverage trend, you'll be taken to a page where you can click and drill down into the class and method level details, much like you could locally, where again you can see where we purposely left this method untested. For PMD, if you click on it, it'll take you down to the individual rule sets which were violated. For test results, it shows on a graph to our right.